Immigration policy is one of the most debated ethical and political issues of our time. But what if you were the one who had to make these on-the-spot decisions? In Papers, Please, you play as the border agent of a fictional authoritarian country, choosing who gets in, who's turned away, and who's detained. In this video, I'll use my gameplay to explore what real philosophers like Hannah Arendt, Joseph Carens, and Michael Walzer have said about immigration ethics. We'll tackle topics like open borders, national sovereignty, institutional corruption, and more. So let's begin. Though before we start, I want to point out that while Papers, Please is a game, the issues it portrays are very real. I don't wish to trivialize this situation and make it into simple, entertaining gaming content, but use the game to illustrate the moral challenges that these systems create, and ultimately share the current philosophical discussion that's happening on this topic. Here, I'm denying someone entry because today I've been ordered to only allow citizens in. They're polite, compliant, their passport displays correct information, but they're not from this country. I follow protocol and I turn them away. What do philosophers have to say about that? Well, according to political theorist Joseph Carens, this action is unjust. In his paper, Aliens and Citizens, The Case for Open Borders, Carens argues that immigration restrictions based on birthplace are morally arbitrary, as where we're born is complete chance, so it's morally wrong to use such a fact politically. Carens compares these immigration restrictions on birthplace to feudal privilege, as they are both systems where rights and status are determined by birth. We see feudal privilege as something that's inherently unfair. So, using this point, Carens argues for open borders, where you're born can't be held politically against you. Carens also builds upon John Rawls's ideas, saying that if we were behind a veil of ignorance when designing society, we wouldn't want to permit borders that restrict freedom of movement based on your birthplace. Political philosopher Michael Walzer, on the other hand, opposes open borders. In his book Spheres of Justice, he argues that political communities have the right to shape their membership. Each community has their own language and norms, and borders are a legitimate way to try and preserve a community's values and culture. And so an effort to maintain this shared culture may justify exclusion in certain contexts. So this person claims to have a job in this country, but I've denied them entry as their passport was expired. Their intentions seemed honest, but I've decided to play it safe and abide by strict protocol. Let's see what our philosophers have to say about that. Well, political theorist David Miller, who defends moderate immigration restrictions, might support this. He argues that while states have obligations to refugees and some migrants, they do ultimately have a right to control immigration and prioritize the needs of their citizens. In this case, this person didn't have the right documents, so it might have been okay for me to err on the side of caution and deny them. Miller wouldn't consider strict documentation inherently unjust. This really was a policy decision and not a personal decision. But Carens would frown on the system for this. This is, again, the kind of morally arbitrary decisions that border restrictions encourage. This person seems to be willing to contribute to society.
You sure about that?
And harm no one. They have a job lined up and a work entry pass. So was it right for me to turn them away over what might have just been a small human error? On this day, the government has ordered me to put all Caletian citizens through an additional security screening, which I did because I just wanted to follow orders. But later, a newspaper reported that a Caletian leader had filed a complaint, claiming that these unprovoked border searches against its citizens were violating their rights. This echoes real-world immigration systems that target certain nationalities for extra scrutiny, like post-9/11 profiling of Middle Eastern travelers or discriminatory visa policies in general. What do philosophers say about that? Hannah Arendt spoke a lot about this topic. In her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, A Report on the Banality of Evil, she warned that injustices can be normalized when individuals are just following orders. In this moment, I performed an injustice because I was, in fact, just following an order. I quite easily became a cog in this greater machine, and one that has discriminatory immigration design. Here, I've caught a man smuggling medicine, and he's bribed me to let him through. You can see my cursor hovering for a while because my moral intuitions were being tested in real time. And I accepted, even though I know it's morally questionable. My reasoning was that it's medicine and not weapons. But too much thinking, brain hurt. Let's see what philosophers have said about this. A utilitarian might defend my choice to let him through. The outcome was most likely good, and someone may get the medicine that they desperately needed. But a deontologist would be very upset with me. To them, rules exist for a reason, and it was my duty to abide by them. The law was broken, and smuggling was enabled. What I did was morally wrong, regardless of the outcome, might have done someone some good. Now, border agents might sometimes let someone through based on humanitarian instinct, or alternatively deny entry even when doing so might risk harm. Should border officers really be expected to be moral agents in this capacity, or just functionaries? This moment was a bit different. It wasn't about who I let through, it was about who profits. A security officer has informed me that he gets profit every time I detain someone. And he's told me that he'll give me a cut of his money for every 2 people that I detain. So, encouraging me to detain more people. This scene shows how border systems may incentivize injustice. I can continue detaining people only when warranted, but now there's a temptation to be a bit more ruthless. The system, in this way, is rewarding morally dubious behavior. This is an example of structural injustice, as theorized by scholars like Iris Marion Young. The officer and I may not intend or want to harm, but we still participate in harmful systems. Border agents enforcing policy may become part of that harm without even realizing it. When incentives are financial, like detention quotas or private prison, immigration enforcement might shift from safety to profit. These are just a few examples of moral dilemmas I faced when playing Papers, Please. Philosophers like Carens, Walzer, and Arendt have attempted to find solutions to these real-world dilemmas, but as we have seen, there are no easy answers. If you do want to dive deeper into this topic, I've linked the readings that I referenced in the description below. And of course, be sure to check out some of the videos that I've done focusing on some of these philosophers. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.